Hello, my name is Nancy Jens. Me from England. I was a milliner. I had a job before I was arrested for burglary. It was only 100 shillings. I only stole it because me needed to feed me child, and if there was any left, I was going to feed myself. I still regretted that day. Those cops treated me cruel and harsh. In England, there was many poor people, including me. But there were some rich. Those people had a grand life compared to me. The rich people stayed rich, but the poor never became rich. I usually walked the dirty streets of England, but I was still happy there because I had money to feed me child. There were many jobs for the poor, but unfortunately all those jobs were replaced by machines. After my crime, I was sentenced to death, but later that changed to 7 years transportation. After 3 years in prison, I was sent on a boat to Botany Bay. I thought it would be a great opportunity to get out of those horrid hulks. The worst part of it was I couldn't bring my child with me. I refused to leave her behind. That night the officers dragged me into the prison. I was filled with sorrow. The next day the officer came in. He had good news. He said I could bring my child with me. I was so happy. We were just about to board the ship when I overheard the officers saying there were 101 female convicts on the Lady Perrin, and there were 179 convicts altogether. That was definitely a few more than I expected. We got on the ship and headed straight for Tenerife. The conditions weren't bad, but it was the shortest part of the journey. We arrived in Tenerife on the 3rd of June. We packed the supplies. We stayed there for a month and then continued to Rio de Janeiro. We arrived there on the 5th of August. It was very exciting. We ate all different fruits that we have never seen before. The Marines packed supplies and fruits like oranges to prevent scurvy. Then we went straight for Cape Town. The conditions were terrible because it was dark and cold. 1. We stayed there for a month and got supplies for the new colony. Eventually we made it to Sydney Cove with frightening storms and smells of sewage, but we made it. I regretted what I said at the beginning of the journey. 1. After eventually arriving in Port Jackson, where it was 10 fathoms deep, the male convicts were allowed to get off the ship before us on the 26th or 27th of January. Finally, on the 6th of February, we were allowed to enter the new colony in New Holland. As the female convicts started working in a much different landscape compared to England. There were tall trees, big red creatures bounding into the forests. That night there was a big storm, nearly like the one we encountered on the ship. The male convicts stole all the alcohol and stormed into the women's tents. All the colony woke up to see what the racket was, and then the Marines burst into the tents and beat up all the male convicts. It was a terrible sight. The doctor was full. There was many very ill convicts. Most of them had scurvy. My life had changed because I am not in prison or walking the streets of England. I am now in Port Jackson and ready to await my fate.